Hi, everybody. As my
Hi.
name, my name is Ryann McCoy, and this is what to expect when you are thinking of expecting. And I will, in just a moment, I'll introduce you to the other speakers, but I wanted to go over a few things. One of the biggest decisions in a person's life is whether or not to have children. They already have the already heavy decision is made even more complicated by having cystic fibrosis. With or without fertility challenges, there is a range of options from unmedicated conception to assisted reproductive therapies, surrogacy, adoption, foster care, and many other ways of becoming a parent, such as a step parent. Adults with CF who have been down this similar path will discuss their own considerations in becoming a parent, including health, fertility, insurance barriers, and finances. So, before we get started onto those introductions, just a few housekeeping tips. This session is being recorded and will be available to all registrants after the event on the CF Foundation YouTube channel. You'll be notified by email when session recordings um, excuse me, are available. Under the stage tab on the right side of your screen, you'll notice that the chat for everyone who is in the session. If you are in the event tab chat, this is the full event and not specific to the session. We will be taking audience questions during this session. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time into the chat box. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. See, we have counselors on call, so if at any point you feel overwhelmed by the conversations, please visit the help desk to request to connect with a counselor. We also want to remind everyone of our community guidelines, which each participant agreed to while registering for BreatheCon. Please be kind, open-minded, and respectful of everyone's opinions and life experiences. Keep all breakout and chat discussions confidential. Use your real identity. Do not use malicious or offensive speech. And finally, do not ask or give any medical advice. This panel discussion is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. Do not make any changes to your own treatment plan without first consulting with your care team. If you have any technology problems during the session, please visit the help desk located at the expo booth area. All right, I will now turn it over to Scott for him to introduce himself.
Thank you and welcome everyone. My name is Scott Dabbene. I am currently 51 years old and originally I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and now live in Saratoga Springs, New York. I'm actually a respiratory therapist and I got into the field to help others with breathing problems. I was actually diagnosed with CF at 40 years old, but I had breathing issues my entire life. I was told I had asthma as a child, and then at age 19, I was told I had bronchiectasis. With the help of prednisone, I was able to keep a lot of my breathing issues in check until I reached my mid-30s. My issues got so bad that I decided to see a new doctor. And at the same time, I had just started to see a urologist who, during physical examination, saw that I didn't have a vas deferens. He immediately sent me for genetic testing, and it was during this test that I was told I had CF. When I first heard the news, I was pretty devastated because I wanted to have a family. But after speaking with my urologist and understanding that many men who have this situation can still have children if they go through a procedure called a TESI. I then had to figure out, what to tell the woman that I had just started dating. But I ultimately decided to tell her right away, and fortunately, she was fine with it. And she also is a respiratory therapist, by the way. Um, in August of 2013, I had the procedure called TESI done. And this is where the doctor actually goes in and extracts the sperm. My wife then had to go through IVF. The first time we went through IVF, it didn't work, and my wife was heartbroken. We decided then to take about a month off, and we started it again. And in November of 2013, we found out that she was pregnant. And a few months later, we found out that we were having twins. We're now 8.5 years old. In 21, I was diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma and had my left kidney removed in October 2021. And thankfully, there are no more signs of the cancer. Being diagnosed with CF was actually the best thing that happened to me, and I believe it saved my life. it made available to me medications and treatments that were not previously available to me. Everything that is important to me is a direct result of having CF. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, although I wish we could come up with a cure real soon. And Ryann, back to you.
Sorry. Hi, guys. My name is Ryann McCoy. I had surgery 2 days ago on a deviated septum. So if I sound like I'm really stuffy, because I am, I've got lots of fun stuff going on here. But my name is Ryann McCoy. I am 39 years old. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was about 6 months old. Currently, I live here in San Antonio, Texas, in the warm weather, and with my 2 rescue dogs. I have a bachelor's of science in organizational leadership and a master's in leadership development. And I currently work for the Air Force as a lead acquisition program manager. So on with me, I got married in April of 2015 and started trying to get pregnant in the fall of 2016 with no luck. My husband was active duty Air Force at the time, and we ended up getting PCS'd to the DC area. And I had to restart the process of fertility treatments, moving from one hospital to the other. I had to restart a lot of the tests to get myself cleared once again to get pregnant. A lot of people with cystic fibrosis know you have to take a lot of tests and everything to get the approval to actually get pregnant. Especially with me, I was not able to quickly conceive, so we had to do fertility treatments. And we continued, when we were in DC, we started to try the IUI fertilities. I was successful in getting pregnant right away 3 times, but after that, the pregnancies didn't sustain longer than 8 to 9 weeks. So in the winter of 2019, my husband and I started the process of IVF, which entails many, many, many more tests. And, we were starting to work on the funding and everything. Late 2019, going into 2020, I had to get a cyst removal on my uterus. And it was a very stressful time. Society pressure, being in my late 30s, was really high. And time basically wasn't on our side, because there's always a time process when it comes to doing these different procedures. Throughout that time, my husband grew distant and disconnected. He had put a lot of pressure on me, saying that he's always wanted a kid since he was 18 years old. And I continually felt like I was basically failing him. By the time January 2020 came around, I was well in the process of starting IVF therapy. And I received a message on my Facebook that my husband was cheating on me with a woman. And they had been together for several months when I was going through a lot of these procedures and stuff. And he said he was out of town. So we tried our marriage with working with a counselor for that year with no avail. And we got PCS orders here to Texas, and I wanted to come to Texas, and immediately when we came to Texas, filed for divorce. But I wanted to stay in this area because I really like the area. I love Texas. So also, I wasn't aware that his girlfriend moved here as well when we PCS'd. So basically, within a few short months, my pretty much dreams of having a child immediately and a future with my husband were pretty much gone to the wayside. So, and it was at this point, I was 37 and came to the realization that I may never have kids. And, we're going to talk more about that later. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nicole for her story.
Thank you, Ryann. My name is Nicole Kowal. I'm 35 years old and was diagnosed with CF at 22 months old on Halloween. I live in a very small town outside of Buffalo, New York, called Langford. We are known for our tractor pulls, cows, and corn, and I couldn't love it anymore. I broke up with a guy who was not the greatest supporter of CF back in April of 2011, which allowed me to start my online dating journey, where I met some very interesting people. At first, I had on my profile that I had CF, and then I actually received some very hurtful words about how broken I am or how someone sick shouldn't be online dating, even how I should commit suicide. which is when I decided to hide my CF off my profile page. But once I'd meet a guy, he'd end up ghosting me. After all of this, I decided to wear it proudly, and I basically put on my dating profile, I have cystic fibrosis and a bunch of other health issues. If you don't like it, move on. Which is when Michael popped up and we started chatting, which then led to us dating officially in August of 2011. We moved into an 1820 farmhouse apartment after dating for only 3 months. He knew what CF was because his cousin's friend had it, and excuse me, and he said he knows how to use Google. So he Googled not only CF issues, but all of my other health issues. In 2013, we bought our first home. In March of 2016, we got married, but our first home was too small, so we bought our second home in 2017, which had 4 bedrooms and plenty of space to grow. During the time there, we took in my sister and my niece. We always treated our niece as our own child, and having her under our roof certainly went into effect in that factor. While we were trying on our own to have kids and not succeeding, I had an ablation, hysteroscopy, polyp removal, and a dilate DNC. The doctors mentioned how if we were going to get pregnant, it would be soon after this, and we were trying. We were not so lucky, though, and the cost out of pocket for infertility was too much. We did look into adoption, but some places around here mentioned that they wouldn't adopt out to someone with a known terminal illness. Surrogacy was not legal here yet, so we gave up and decided to sell the big home and move somewhere smaller and more of our lifestyle, the country. During the years of moving and trying, we still nothing. We wanted something to care for, so we fostered pit bulls, having 31 dogs walk through our home over 9 years and keeping only 2 of them. Big accomplishment in my book. But I also had my own little rescue animal thing, where at one point we had 17 rats, 7 guinea pigs, 2 turtles, 3 tortoises, 2 cats, and a dog. And all of that was to try and fill the void of not having kids. August 2019, we signed our forever home in the country with 1 bedroom and 2.5 bathrooms. Got to have those extra bathrooms with CF. However, I started Trikafta in November of 2019. And by April 10th of 2020, I knew there was something up with my body. And I found an old pregnancy test from the trying days. And bam, it lit up like a Christmas tree. My husband didn't believe it, so he probably bought about $200 worth of pregnancy tests, all different makes and models of it. And they all lit up positive. I was able to stay on all my medications throughout the whole pregnancy. I did, however, have preeclampsia and abundance of excess fluid, but the baby was fine. I was treated for stroke on the last day of pregnancy, and on November 14th of 2020, our miracle man was born, Ernest Michael Kowal, and he entered the world to Don't Stop Believing by Journey in the operating room because I had a C-section, and our doctor asked what music would I like to listen to, and I love the 80s. Our lives turned around completely, becoming parents and starting Trikafta. This was just a dream only 4 years ago. Now this is my life every day. A 2-year-old walking around totally fine and healthy, no issues of mommy being on any medications during pregnancy or me breastfeeding and having CF. In the years leading up to today, I've been diagnosed with a gluten allergy, CF-related diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, scoliosis, a couple of other things that I probably am forgetting. But I've always been very open about my CF and life. I even published a book about it, but now I'm going to turn it over to Katy.
Hi, my name is Katy, and I'm 38 years old. I was born in 1984 and diagnosed with CF when I was 13 months old. As a child, I grew up managing my CF with daily medications and treatments and the occasional hospitalization. When I began junior high school, my frequency of hospitalizations increased. I decided to go away to college and became a registered nurse, eventually finding my dream job as a neonatal ICU nurse. My whole life, I wanted to fall in love, and I always dreamed of becoming another mother, but wasn't sure how that would happen for me. In 2008, I started dating my now husband, Joey. He and I were coworkers since 2000, and he knew all about CF. I never had to have the I have CF conversation with him. I did say that I wanted kids, but that I wasn't sure how that eventually would play out for me. I started getting sicker and needing longer hospitalizations and more medications. In 2011, I was told that I needed to be evaluated for a double lung transplant. I decided for me personally, a chance at transplant and extra years with my boyfriend and family were worth all of the risk that came along with it. I was on the transplant list for 6.5 months and was transplanted in November 2011. In 2012, Joey proposed. We had our wedding set for October 2013. At the end of 2012, I ended up in the hospital with a virus and ended up on life support, ECMO, and dialysis. The doctors didn't know if I would make it, but I did. I came off all of life support and was slowly recovering and getting back to normal. With our wedding approaching and being a mom always in the back of my head, at one of my reproductive endocrinologist appointments, my doctor suggested I freeze my eggs. After talking with Joey and knowing that we both would like children in the future, we were excited to proceed, only to have the head doctor of the practice call me and cancel the procedure because I was too risky of a patient. I was crushed and didn't know where to go from here. Right before our wedding, I started getting short of breath just walking small distances. When we got back from our honeymoon, after having many different tests and ruling other causes out, I was told I was in chronic rejection. I started treatment to try and stabilize my lung function, but nothing worked. My only option was a second double lung transplant. My kidney function was an issue to get listed. After my life support episode, my kidneys never recovered completely, and I needed to have a kidney transplant before I was able to be relisted for a second double lung transplant. 2 of my sisters got tested and were both a match. Christine was a slightly better match and donated her kidney to me in July of 2014. I was relisted for a second lung transplant in August. In December, I got sick and was admitted to the hospital and was told that I was too sick to continue to wait for lungs at home. I knew that I was either going to be lucky and blessed with a second lung transplant or I was going to die in the hospital. After 2 dry runs, I was finally transplanted in February 2015. I went home in March and started to really dream about my future. In 2016, I found a different fertility center that knew all about my complicated medical history and was willing to let me freeze my eggs. I tried twice, but each time they retrieved eggs, the embryos never made it to the freezing stage. My husband and I didn't know what to do next, but I wasn't ready to give up on my dream of becoming a mom. In 2017, 2 years after my second transplant, I was healthier than I had been in a really long time and got the approval from my doctors that I was healthy enough to actually try and carry a baby myself. My husband and I tried for 6 months with no luck. We then went to doing IUIs. We did 5 and they all failed. I decided I was going to take a few months off and give my body a break before we moved on to IVF. Unfortunately, in 2018, I had some kidney complications and had to restart on a medication that was not safe for pregnancy. At this point, my sister, Christine, who also donated her kidney, had decided that she would be a surrogate for us, and we started looking into egg donors. We went through a ton of profiles and found one that looked like me and had similar background and characteristics. We purchased a batch, which was 6 eggs, and we fertilized them with my husband's sperm, and that yielded 2 embryos. We were going through the process of drawing up contracts and getting screened by the fertility center and ready to transfer an embryo into my sister when I found out I was unexpectedly pregnant. We obviously canceled the transfer between my sister and the donor egg embryo we made. I was so shocked that my body was able to get pregnant, but also really excited and scared at the same time. Unfortunately, I miscarried around 9 weeks. I was devastated, but I also had hope that one of the 2 donor egg embryos we had frozen were going to work for my sister. We transferred one in January of 2019, and it took, but at the 8-week scan, there was no growth or heartbeat. We transferred our last embryo in July 2019, and it failed. We were back to square one. I kept thinking that maybe I got pregnant after all of that time of really trying to show that my eggs were healthier than they had been when I tried to harvest in 2016, even though I was 3 years older. I found a new fertility center and harvested my eggs at the end of 2019. We got 2 healthy embryos. We were ready to try one last time with my sister and our embryo that was all me and my husband. And then COVID happened and paused everything. We finally were able to schedule a transfer September 2020, and it took. We were cautiously optimistic because she had been there before and so had I, and we still had no baby. Every doctor's appointment that went by and everything looked good was a huge relief. We started to actually get excited that our dream of becoming parents was finally happening. On May 11th, 2021, my sister delivered our baby girl, Riley Catherine Monte. I'm currently not working because I'm having kidney issues. My transplanted kidney is in chronic rejection, and I will eventually need a second kidney transplant. So right now, my 2 main jobs are to keep myself healthy and to stay home and raise Riley, which is the highlight of my life. Let's start from the beginning. Nicole and Ryann, when dating or meeting your current significant other, did you tell them right away about CF and potential fertility issues?
So for me, I'm currently dating now. I have found it easier. Also, depending on how I meet someone, I found it easier to be upfront. My dating profile, I say it. I think it's just easier to let them know right away. And, I think if it scares people off, it scares people off. That's not something I want to be around anyway. Because they need to know about, that cystic fibrosis is who I am today. And I don't like people to wonder. I remember back in the day when I was younger, people used to think I smoked just because I cough so much. So it's something that's important, a part of me to tell them right away that this is what you're coming up against. And it's, just kind of like this is putting it all out there. I found it's easier.
At first, for me, it was hard. My first real boyfriend that I dated for 5 years, it didn't really work well with me having CF. It was very hard for him. He'd always leave the room for me when I did treatments. He had a hard time with carrying my medications for me if I didn't have pockets, because girls having pockets is not a thing. If we fought, he would say, what does it matter? In 20 years, you'll be dead anyways. So it was really hard. But then now when I met my husband, my now husband, Michael, he knew what CF was, which I lucked out on. But he Googled CF and all of my medications and all my health issues. And when he was Googling, he knew that CF would have infertility issues. He still asked me to marry him, though. So obviously it didn't bother him too much. But during our baby day, our struggle baby days were very hard on us. And there was a lot of tears, a lot of crying. And he was always strong and stood by, even though I'd be a blobbering mess. I definitely think being very open about all of the hurdles, all the doctors, everything like that, definitely helped, not just with him, but with my family, my bosses, and life in general. Not hiding my health issues with that has definitely made it, I think, a lot easier, and not hiding behind anything. So, yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on to question number 2. This is for Katy and Scott. Each of you have gone through a lot of medical procedures to try to conceive. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
Yeah. Because men don't have a vas deferens, it doesn't necessarily mean we can't have children. A lot of times you can, we just can't do it. We just can't, do it the quote unquote normal way. For men like me, we have to go through a procedure called a tessie, where they actually extract the sperm from the testes. I had mine done in 2013. It's an outpatient procedure. So I was home later the same day, and recovery actually wasn't that bad. It was just some rest for a few days. The pain wasn't terrible. And then once that was done, my wife then had she started IVF.
I harvested my eggs twice and it wasn't successful. It was a ton of hormone shots and appointments for hormone levels and ultrasounds to determine when the best time was to harvest my eggs. We then moved on to doing 5 IUIs, which also didn't work. The first few were natural, and the last 2 we used medications to increase the number of eggs I had. So it was just a little uncomfortable because my body had a lot more eggs than normally. I ended up getting pregnant in 2018 unexpectedly, but miscarried and had to have a DNC, which is a procedure to remove the tissue from your uterus from the pregnancy because it can cause infections and other issues if left behind. I had twilight anesthesia for the procedure, so I don't really remember the procedure, but I was very, very uncomfortable for a few days and I bled a lot afterwards. And the third time we harvested my eggs, we used a different fertility center. So the protocol was a little different, just different meds, different dosages, but mainly it was just all the hormone shots, going for labs and ultrasounds and waiting for the perfect day to retrieve the eggs.
Ryann, Katy, and Scott, several of you have been very open about having miscarries. Why do you think it's important to share that experience with people?
So I think it's important because it's not something that people talk about, but so many people experience it. Our social media profiles, you don't advertise if you've had miscarriages, you advertise when you're pregnant or when you've had a kid. And I didn't really know a lot of people that had miscarriages until after I had them, and then people came forward. I also noticed like a lot of my friends and family, mainly friends, didn't really know what to say. I had a lot of friends getting pregnant around that time too, and they didn't want to tell me because they felt really bad. And it's something that's not talked about. And I don't, you don't understand it until you're almost in it. And because we don't share our stories, having miscarriages, you don't take photos and post about Instagram that you've had a miscarriage. And it's a whole other side of life that a lot of people deal with. And I think it's important to really share those stories so you don't feel like you're the only one.
I agree with Ryann. I think that so many people go through miscarriages. We had two, one myself and one with my gestational carrier. You really feel like you're all alone dealing with it. But once we opened up about it, a large community who were also struggling to become parents opened up and made us feel like we weren't alone in our struggles. Miscarriages are so common. And I think that if more people talked openly, you would realize that you're not alone and it wasn't anything that you did that caused it to not work.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we did IVF, and the first time it didn't work, and my wife was devastated, and she blamed herself. And going through the process, it really is a roller coaster of emotions. And I remember just thinking, I wish there was somebody out there that could understand what we were going through and be willing to speak to us, because we had so many questions. We didn't know about the unknown. And then on a random phone call with a friend, I had brought it up, and he had mentioned that him and his wife had gone through it 8 times. And ultimately, she turned out to be a really great resource for us, somebody we could just share our feelings with. And she helped validate a lot of what we were feeling and help prepare us for what was going to come next. Because, like I said, it truly is a roller coaster of emotions. And having somebody to talk to who went through it, for me, made it a lot easier for us to handle.
Yeah, it's just something you don't plan on. And when it happens, it happens. All right, next question. This one is for Nicole and Katy. How have you adjusted from caring for your own health to caring for your child as well?
So I think that having a child has motivated me to take even better care of myself than I did before. I'm better with keeping up with my doctor's appointments. As a post-transplant patient, I don't do chest physical therapy or nebulizers anymore. So I don't really have treatments that take, a big chunk of my time, but I am consistent with taking my medications on time, getting my blood work done, which is really important for my transplant meds. And I just rely on family when I need to go to doctor's appointments. And sometimes just to make myself get exercise in, I wake up way earlier than Riley wakes up because exercise also is so important for my post-transplant life. So I think having her has just motivated me to, take better care of myself. So I'm here for as long as I possibly can be for her.
It definitely took a bit for me, having a true future to look out for now with Ernie. I mean, I love my husband, but having a child of your own definitely made a big impact. I want to see him grow up. I want to see him hopefully get married someday. With that, I am much better at taking my medications now. I was never great at it, but I'm definitely better. I haven't done treatments since the purge from Trikafta about 3 years ago, but I also like to share my appointments with me. So he goes to CF clinic with me and sits in the PFT room with me and everything. And I wanted him to see what happens with mommy and know how much of a miracle he really is. And I want to be open with him about mommy's life hurdles. And hopefully that'll show him to make sure that he takes care of himself, just like mommy takes care of herself.
All right, now this one's for Scott. Can you talk about some unexpected financial challenges you've experienced with treatments or after having children?
So, aside from the usual financial issues that a lot of us with CF have to deal with, it gets magnified when you have a family. You have other people you have to think about and consider. And before I had a family, I really didn't care that much. I wasn't overly concerned. Should something happen to me, my wife had a full-time job, just wasn't a big deal. But then after the kids came along, it became very stressful because we can't get life insurance. So that was one thing that I struggle with. So I really try to save as much as I can. So I want to know that if anything happens to me, my family will be taken care of. I also balance that with, I want to retire at an age where I can still do things. I look at retirement in 3 phases. You have your go years, your slow years, and your no years. And I want to retire on my go year. So, that coupled with the fact that I worry about my family and what will happen, it really places a lot of extra stress. At least I feel it.
All right. So this one's going to be for all of us. What is one thing you wish you had known before starting your fertility journey? And I'll start, and I say, I think the one thing I wish I would have known better was understanding the process of how long it actually takes. There's a lot of waiting, cycles every month. You have to wait, and you have to try so many of one thing before you can move on to the next. I definitely probably would have started earlier. I also wish I would have known that my partner was going to support me. I don't think we had enough of those conversations. I think my partner was more focused on just having a child and not understanding like that wasn't going to be the easiest thing for me, even though we did a lot. He went to my doctor's appointments with me and everything, and he understood. But I don't think he actually really accepted. So just making sure you're on the same page with your partner, and you talk and are open, and keep that connection while you're going through it, because it's definitely not easy.
I think I would just say that it's not an easy journey, and unfortunately it doesn't always end up with a happy ending. It's really hard. It's emotional, physically, mentally, financially. We wanted to start our family in 2016 and didn't end up becoming parents until 2021. It took a lot of money, and there was a lot of heartbreak along the way leading up to our biggest blessing, Riley. So, it's just, and not everyone gets their, baby at the end of all of this. So it's really, really hard.
For me, I wish I would have known a lot about the psychological impact having kids would have. For me, as a father with CF, I probably think about death and dying more than is healthy. I want to, I'm an older dad to begin with, and I want to make sure that my kids are going to be taken care of should anything happen to me. I don't want them to be a burden on society. I want to be around long enough to see them be really productive adults. And I really struggle with that. And the other thing too is having kids, I want to go out. I want to teach them how to play baseball and do things. And I get tired real easily. I get winded real easily. And sometimes it's embarrassing to me, but it shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. So that's what I struggle with.
I understand all of your stories there, but ours was a little bit different. Just because we stopped trying doesn't mean it didn't happen. There was a lot of different avenues we tried, but we did the whole give up, and here's our little miracle now. So I definitely feel like don't lose all hope there.
Okay, this one's for Katy. Katy, these procedures can be very expensive. Can you explain a little bit how were you able to pay for all these treatments? IUI, IVF, surrogacy?
Sure. So IUI and IVF was actually covered under my insurance when I was trying to get pregnant myself. Once we brought in the whole surrogacy, avenue, nothing was covered. My sister was our gestational carrier, so although we didn't pay her money to carry our baby, the entire process was very expensive. We pretty much paid everything out of pocket up until she was 10 weeks pregnant and then transferred over to her own OB. She had surrogate-friendly insurance, so luckily then her insurance took over. But from IVF to harvest our embryo to the contract that needed to be drawn up with the lawyers, blood work, ultrasounds, the embryo transfer, psych consults, and so much more, we paid completely out of pocket for. When we decided to start trying to grow our family, we knew surrogacy was going to be expensive. So we opened a bank account where a large portion of our income went straight into. We're going to be married 10 years and we still live in an apartment because we haven't been able to buy that house yet because all of our money kind of went into this. My sister is also the breadwinner of her family, so we needed to cover her lost wages. God forbid something happened to her. So our bank account kind of became our surrogacy contingency plan. My husband is a firefighter and worked overtime basically whenever he could get it. And he is also a nurse and did nursing on the side. So he just hustled so that we could afford all of this.
All right, Scott. Since having kids, has there been any unexpected emotions that you've experienced?
Just the constant worry that I mentioned before as being an older dad. I get mad at myself sometimes because I can't do a lot of the things that I want to do as a father, or maybe like a healthy father can do. So I've battled with, feelings of depression and inadequacy at times. And, as I mentioned earlier, I want to be around, for them to see them be self-sufficient. So that's a lot of what I struggle with in my head.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is going to be for all of us again. What is the next step for each of you? So I will start, and it says, I'm not really sure what the next step for me is at the moment. Like I said, I am enjoying, I guess, the wonderful world of dating and all the the things I'm experiencing with that. I have looked into potentially freezing my eggs, and I'm considering that as a potential. I'm really learning more about myself as I go on this journey and what I need as in a partner going forward. So I'm kind of just really taking my time and putting faith in that things will work out how they should.
So for me, I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I recently had my kidney removed. So I got to get that in order. I got to start taking better care of myself because I'm not the best patient. Other than that, it's just about balancing life, our treatments, family, work, and just I'm probably going to, start with a psychiatrist soon to help me deal with a lot of that. So I think that's what's next for me.
Our next step is definitely to buy a house. We do have another embryo frozen, but the cost of surrogacy is so high, we would rather use our money now to buy a house for Riley and take her on vacations and give her life experiences that she will remember forever. I always I wonder if we use that last embryo, but even if we used our last embryo and spent all the money again, like there's no guarantee that it would result in another baby. So I think we're just going to love Riley, appreciate the one baby that we do have, and, do as much with her as we can.
I'd have to say our next step would be to try and save money more. We want to build up a little farm where we live. I want chickens and goats and pigs and Ernie to do 4-H and stuff. But luckily, if we can't do that, we do live next to a veterans retreat where I help out every now and then, and we could always board our animals there. But also, we started the daycare journey, so that's been really fun and interesting. As Ernie gets older, we'd like to do some family trips and really live life to the extreme fullest. My family did that with me, and enjoy our time together and sort of be like the Three Musketeers. So just really everything to spend time together.
So a question came in for Nicole and Katy. How did you and your significant other make the decision to try to have children?
My husband and I talked about kids right away and knew we both wanted to become parents. I also brought up the topic of surrogacy early on, not knowing if I would ever be able to get pregnant myself. After my second lung transplant, I was much healthier, and we decided it was the perfect time to try and build our family. After my miscarriage and our gestational carrier's miscarriage, I kept pushing because I had a gut feeling that we were meant to be parents. He was a little devastated and kind of tried to convince me that we could live a great life even if we didn't have children. But now that we have Riley, he is so happy that I kept pushing and was stubborn about not giving up on having a baby. Surrogacy was always our best option, and he was on board 100% because he didn't want anything to happen to my transplanted lungs.
We didn't really make the decision. Ernie's sort of a surprise miracle. We tried for so long and hoped for a child, but obviously we weren't really anticipating it when we moved into a 1-bedroom house. But after Trikafta, made my life just way better with my health and everything, and it went right up. We had our Ernie. So we always had the mentality that whatever happens, happens. Sort of like whatever's get put on our plate, we either eat it or give it to the dog to eat. So someone's going to eat it, and I ate this one and had a little 2-year-old. So, I mean, it is what it is. So the open mentality, I guess, just dealt with it, I guess.
Does anybody else out in the audience have any questions? Feel free to post them in the chat. Nicole, how has this experience shown your strength?
It's definitely made me much stronger as a person. I've been able to ironically slow down in life since having Ernie here, and which is shocking. I've always been a person who puts too much on my plate. I was a volunteer ice skating teacher for kids with disabilities for about 20 years. I was a volunteer firefighter and EMT for about 15 years. I fostered 31 pit bulls in 9 years. I co-chaired the Orchard Park Great Strides walk site with my father. I work full-time, at least 40 hours a week for a local car dealership. I work part-time at a local bar and, trying to still be a wife and stuff like that. And then when we had Ernie, I stepped back from a lot. Now I do stuff more that he's able to come with me to do. So the Great Strides walk, he's obviously able to come with me to do. In my office here, I have toys and he comes and stays with me sometimes here even. So I still work full-time, still work part-time, but only every now and then when needed. And I'm definitely still co-chairing the walk. But anything I can do with Ernie and Michael's where my main focus is now.
So for the entire panel, what advice would you give others who are thinking about trying to conceive with CF? You want to go first, Ryann?
Yeah, I'll go first. Plan early. Start thinking about it. I think growing up, I never thought I would be able to really have kids. So I didn't start planning until I was in my later 20s. I just didn't think it was going to be an option. I thought it was going to be too risky. And, it was still a very new experience when Trikafta came out. And I started hearing a lot of people getting pregnant a lot easier. It wasn't something that it was necessarily on my radar until around then. I always wanted kids, but I never again thought it was something that was going to be completely feasible. So, and it's still an option. Like I said, there are many ways. There are many ways, other ways to have kids. I think, people ask if I was just considering just getting pregnant on my own, like getting, a donor and just having a kid. I think that that's a big challenge having CF. That I would need a partner, and I know that I don't want to do this on my own, just with having cystic fibrosis. I'm sure it's doable, and I'm sure there are people out there that can, but it's not something that I don't think I could do on my own.
Katy, how about you?
I think that finding the right doctors is really important because, like I said in my intro, I had some doctors that were just really unkind, kind of got my hopes up and then said, oh, you're too risky of a patient, without even really talking to me. He just looked at my chart and said, no, this is not okay. So I think making sure that your doctor knows CF, that, is comfortable with you going through everything. Also to plan early. I was 37 when I harvested my eggs, which is on the late side. I think, even if you're unmarried, if you think that you want to potentially have kids, I think, it's not a bad idea to look into harvesting your eggs and having them as a back burner because you never know what's going to happen and where your life will go. And it could only help.
Nicole?
I would have to say I definitely am on the bandwagon of do it early. I wish that we went down the fertility stuff, even while we were engaged in things, just so we really got the answers and we didn't have to buy a big house just to downside to a smaller house. We would have saved a lot of money there. But also, don't think it's not just you. There's two people in a relationship, and for the longest time, I always thought it was me until we had my husband's sperm tested. And the doctor was like, oh, no, he's got slower swimmers. So it's not just you. So it was sort of nice to be like, oh, I'm not just the only broken one here. But just not to try to wear that so heavily on your shoulders. We have enough stuff with CF, and don't give up.
Yeah. And don't forget about the mind. You got to take care of yourself emotionally and psychologically. So as I pointed out earlier, for me, I would recommend having people around that you can talk to. I didn't always want to burden my wife with everything because she was going through stuff, and find somebody to talk to, and don't bankrupt yourself. This can get very expensive. your health and your life is important as well. So that would be the advice I would have. And another question just came in. Did any of you guys consider adoption as an option, and why or why not?
So if if the last time I tried to harvest my eggs didn't work, we were talking about adoption, but also adoption is even more expensive than surrogacy. So I think that was kind of what hindered us. If it hadn't worked out, like, we would have considered it, but I mean, it's just very costly and, not an easy journey either.
We thought about adoption. I mentioned before how we talked to a couple, and they were a couple places, and they were just like, if we know you have health issues, especially a terminal illness, we really it's very hard for us to adopt out. And I was like, okay, what happens if you walk off the sidewalk and get hit by a bus? Okay, sorry. But as for adoption, we had our niece too, and we always took her and did stuff with her. I definitely am thankful that we had her. So at least she was sort of like in a step-in child for us. She wasn't ours, but we pretended that she was whenever we would go to work functions and things. So I was always open to it. It was just something that there was no way we'd have the funds for it. We couldn't even pay for full fertility stuff, let alone to do for the adoption. So for us, it just wasn't feasible.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, but thank God once we got pregnant, we never really talked about it again. And shockingly, it is something that I still think about. I feel a little guilty that we haven't, because I was like, well, we were gonna, and now we're not because we have our own. But yet another mental issue that I have to deal with. But no, it's a nice thing to do, but we just ultimately decided against it.
I do see one. Someone just asked, did any of us consider foster care? Ironically, with us fostering the dogs and me being hysterical over every dog leaving our house, I don't know if I could have done foster care with kids. My aunts and uncles all do foster care, and so does my sister now, actually does too. And there's some issues there, and I just am like, I'm going to be heartbroken, and they're not even my kids. So that definitely I thought about, but I cried every single dog that left our house, even ones that I was like, okay, you need to go, but I bawled still. So for me, thought about it, never really considered it though.
Same. My husband and I talked about it when I didn't think that it was going to happen naturally for us. But same thing. I just I would never be able to give a child up if it didn't work out to be a foster to adoption situation. And I know, unfortunately, they always want, to go with the natural parent, which is amazing for them. But I know I wouldn't be able to get over getting attached to a child and then not having them anymore.
I haven't. We had talked about adoption also, me and my ex-husband. My sister actually adopted, and she fostered to adopt and went through several challenges with that, just because if they're in foster care, they weren't in a good situation, and there was a lot of things that when the child that they fostered had been addicted to when he was born and had a lot of mental problems. And that was another really big challenge. And you have to be, willing to, and you have to learn a lot about it and understanding, especially from the foster situations, that there's a lot that can affect a child at that young age that you're going to have to work with in the future too. Not that we were against any of that, but it is huge hurdles to go through. I read a lot of psychology books and try to understand, development and brain development, and especially in children. And when you have trauma at the young age, like if they're taken away and put into foster care, that is a trauma at a young age, and that can really have an effect on them. And you really have to do a lot of work with them. And it's just something that, things to consider looking at with like foster care and everything too. And obviously I didn't get that far. So.
Do any of you know of any resources that were available to you for trying to conceive?
So nothing when I was trying, but now Boomer Esiason Foundation has an IVF grant, which a lot of people can look into if they are having financial issues, getting to where they want to be. They should look that up.
I know my ex-husband was active duty military, so they do offer discounted IVF and IUI treatments for that. That is all. It's still expensive, but it's not, extremely expensive. Like if you don't have that TRICARE benefit, so there is that.
Yeah, and I would say call your insurance company because they covered some of the IVF costs for us, so that was definitely a help. Any other questions?
I have questions for Katy and Scott.
Shoot.
What are you guys doing for the kids with your CF? Like, do you explain it to them? Do they know what it's about?
Yeah, Katy, you want to go?
So I actually haven't had to, I don't do any treatments or anything. I take pills and she sees me take pills, but she hasn't really asked any questions yet. But I'm going to be even with surrogacy, we have a picture of, me, my husband, and my sister with her pregnant belly. So like, she's going to know right away that, she was in my sister's belly. So I'm an open book with her, and I will tell her all about CF. I have videos and like stuff from going through my second transplant. There was a for Katy like thing, and so I have so many videos and stuff, and I'll show her when she's a little bit older. But as of right now, she's not old enough to comprehend anything, so we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, when I was younger and I used to do the vest, the kids used to like to sit on my lap. But I stopped doing the vest because for me, it didn't work. That doesn't mean you should stop, but for me, I just didn't feel it didn't work. I don't give my kids enough credit. Like when I got diagnosed, we didn't tell my kids, even after my kidney was out, we didn't tell them. And then 2 weeks ago, one of my kids just talked to me about it. Like they knew I had it the whole time. They know I have CF, but they don't know what it is. And yeah, I think it's important for them to know what it is and hopefully understand it. But yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to them about it.
I have CF related diabetes. So whenever like my phone goes off for my like CGM, Ernie is 2.5 and he comes running and he knows that mommy needs her phone or something. So I definitely I think the being open with them and things have been interesting to say the least. He doesn't understand.
I have a pump also. So like Riley, like it's always like, I'm like, that's mommy's medicine. Like she knows she can't touch it, but that's
Ernie takes his medicine, which is like just a vitamin gummy. And he's like, only one. And I was like, yeah, mommy takes 7. But I don't know. Something curious there. Anyone else have any questions?
See if anything came through. None. Looks like that's it.
I guess we could start to wrap up. I want to thank all my fellow panelists for sharing your knowledge and insight about the family planning. And thanks to all of you for your attention and questions. Before we go, please take some time to fill out the satisfaction question under the poll tab on the right-hand side of your screen. We'd love to know how you felt about today's conversation. We're now moving on to the next block of agenda items, which will include additional small group discussions you can take part in. Thank you again for your attending, and we will see you all at the next session.